Hello everyone. Before we begin, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. Comment where you're watching from and what time it is right now. That's how YouTube keeps sending you more chilling stories like this. And now, let the night begin with Story 1, The Christmas Cabin We Should Have Left. I want you to picture this. Me standing at the window of what I thought was going to be our perfect December getaway, watching my girlfriend sleep and realizing that the footprints in the snow outside weren't ours. They were small, child-sized, and they led directly to the window I was looking out of. That's when I knew we'd made a terrible mistake coming here. Let me back up. My girlfriend Claire and I had been talking about getting away for months. Nothing fancy. Just somewhere quiet where we could disconnect for a few days before the holiday chaos really kicked in. I found the cabin on one of those rental sites, a small A-frame tucked into the mountains about 3 hours north of where we live. The photos looked perfect. Rustic but cozy, surrounded by pine trees, with a stone fireplace and enough isolation that we wouldn't hear traffic or neighbors or anything except the wind and maybe some wildlife. The price was almost too good, honestly. I remember hovering over the booking button wondering what the catch was. But the reviews seemed genuine enough. People talking about peaceful weekends, beautiful sunrises, the perfect place to unplug. Only one review gave me pause. Someone had written, "Beautiful property, but the shed out back should really be kept locked. Found some items in there that seemed out of place." The owner had responded quickly, apologizing and saying they'd taken care of it. That was 8 months ago. I figured whatever it was had been resolved. We arrived on a Friday afternoon in early December, just as the light was starting to fade. The drive up the mountain had been gorgeous. Fresh snow on everything. That particular kind of silence you only get in the woods. Claire kept taking pictures out the window, already planning her Instagram posts. I felt that flutter of excitement you get at the start of a trip. That sense that you've successfully escaped your regular life for a little while. The cabin looked exactly like the photos. Maybe even better. Someone had already started a fire in the fireplace, and there was a handwritten note on the kitchen counter from the owner, Tom, welcoming us and letting us know he'd stocked the firewood and left extra blankets in the closet. His number was at the bottom if we needed anything. It all felt incredibly thoughtful. We spent that first evening exactly how we'd planned, making dinner together, drinking wine, talking about nothing important. Claire fell asleep on the couch around 10, and I carried her to the bedroom. I stayed up a little longer, watching the snow fall through the window, feeling genuinely peaceful for the first time in weeks. I didn't go near the shed until the next morning. It was Claire who mentioned it, actually. We were having coffee on the small deck, both of us bundled up and watching the sunrise turn everything pink and gold. She pointed to a structure about 30 yards from the cabin, half hidden by trees. "Is that a shed?" she asked. I didn't notice it in the photos. It was painted the same color as the cabin, which is probably why it blended in. But now that she'd pointed it out, I couldn't stop looking at it. There was something about the way it sat there, slightly apart from everything else, that made me uneasy. Which was stupid. It was just a shed. "Want to check it out?" I said, trying to sound casual. We walked over together, our boots crunching in the fresh snow. The shed had a simple latch door, no lock. I pulled it open, expecting garden tools or maybe some outdoor furniture stored for the winter. Instead, I found toys. Not a few toys scattered around. A lot of toys. Old ones, the kind you'd find at estate sales or in someone's attic. Wooden blocks, a doll with a cracked porcelain face, a rusted metal truck, a jump rope with wooden handles. And they weren't just stored there randomly. They were arranged in a perfect circle in the center of the shed floor, like someone had been playing with them and then walked away mid-game. Everything was covered in a thin layer of frost, like the shed hadn't been opened in months. maybe longer. That's weird, Claire said quietly. I remember the back of my neck prickling. Something about the scene felt deeply wrong, though I couldn't articulate why. It wasn't just that the toys were old or arranged strangely. It was the intentionality of it. Someone had placed them like that. Recently enough that they hadn't been disturbed, but long enough ago that frost had settled over everything. Maybe Tom has kids, I said, though I didn't believe it even as I said it. Or grandkids. Maybe, Claire said. But she stepped back, pulling her jacket tighter. Let's go back inside. I closed the shed door and we walked back to the cabin without discussing it further. I told myself it was nothing. People keep weird things in sheds all the time. But I couldn't shake the image of those toys arranged so carefully in the darkness. That night I woke up at 3:17 a.m. I know the exact time because I checked my phone trying to figure out what had pulled me out of sleep. The cabin was silent except for the wind outside and Claire's soft breathing beside me. I was about to close my eyes again when I heard it. A soft scraping sound, like something being dragged across wood. It was coming from outside. I got up slowly, trying not to wake Claire, and moved to the bedroom window. We'd left the curtains open and moonlight reflected off the snow, making everything visible in shades of blue and silver. That's when I saw them. Footprints in the snow leading from the tree line to our bedroom window. Small footprints like a child's, making a straight path through the untouched powder. They stopped directly below where I was standing, close enough that whoever made them would have been able to look right into our room. My heart was slamming against my ribs. I stood there for what felt like hours, but was probably only a few minutes, searching the tree line for any sign of movement. Nothing. Just wind and shadows and those impossible footprints. In the morning, I went outside before Claire woke up. The footprints were still there, frozen in place. I followed them back to the tree line, but they didn't continue into the woods. They just stopped, like whoever made them had vanished into thin air. I called Tom, the owner, while Claire was in the shower. "Hey, this is probably nothing," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "But I found some toys in the shed out back. Just wanted to check. Do you have kids who play out here?" There was a long pause. "Toys?" "Yeah. In a circle on the floor, old toys." Another pause. When Tom spoke again, his voice was different, careful. "The property's been empty for 4 months. I haven't been up there since September. Are you sure the shed was closed when you arrived?" "It wasn't locked," I said. "Just latched." "It should have been locked," he sighed. "Look, sometimes local kids wander onto the property. It's pretty isolated and they probably think it's abandoned during the off-season. I'll come up tomorrow and put a better lock on it. Don't worry about it." His explanation made sense, sort of, but it didn't explain the footprints outside our window. I didn't mention those to him. That second night, I couldn't sleep. I kept watching the window, waiting to see if anything would appear. Claire asked if I was okay, and I told her I was just wired from all the coffee I'd had. I didn't want to scare her. Part of me still wanted to believe there was a rational explanation. Around 2 a.m., I dozed off despite myself. I woke to Claire shaking my shoulder, her face pale in the darkness. "Connor," she whispered, "there's someone outside." We both moved to the window, and there they were again. Fresh footprints in the snow leading from a slightly different angle but ending in the same place directly below our window. And this time, I could see something else. Small handprints on the glass, low down at a height where a child would place them. The prints were on the outside of the window, pressed against the glass like someone had been trying to see in, or trying to get in. Claire grabbed my arm hard enough to hurt. "What the fuck, Connor?" I should have left right then. That's what I tell people now when I share this story. We should have packed our bags and driven down the mountain in the middle of the night and never looked back. But it was 2 in the morning. The roads were icy and some stupid part of me still wanted a rational explanation. "I'll go check," I said. "Don't go out there," Claire said immediately. "Are you insane?" "I'll just look around. There has to be an explanation." I put on my boots and jacket and grabbed the flashlight we'd brought. Claire stayed at the window watching me. I could feel her eyes on my back as I walked toward the tree line, following the footprints. They were so small. That's what kept striking me. Child-sized, maybe a 6 or 7-year-old. The prints were deep and clear, recently made. I followed them back to the trees, where they stopped again just like before. I shined my flashlight into the woods, nothing but trees and shadows and silence. That's when I heard it. A soft giggling sound, high-pitched and distant, coming from somewhere deeper in the forest. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to run. I turned and walked as quickly as I could back to the cabin without actually sprinting, feeling like something was watching me the entire way. Claire was standing in the doorway when I got back. "We're leaving," she said. It wasn't a question. We packed in less than 10 minutes, throwing everything into bags without bothering to fold anything. I was loading the car when Claire called out from inside. "Connor, you need to see this." She was standing in the living room pointing at the fireplace mantel. There, arranged in a neat row, were 5 of the toys from the shed. The doll, the truck, 3 of the wooden blocks. We hadn't brought them inside. The cabin had been locked the entire time. I don't remember much about the drive down the mountain. I know Claire was crying, and I know I was going way too fast on those icy roads, and I know we didn't speak until we were back in cell phone range. Then Claire called Tom and told him we were leaving and why, her voice shaking with anger and fear. Tom went silent for a long time. Then he said something that still makes my blood run cold. "What room were you staying in?" "The bedroom on the east side," Claire said. "Why?" "That was Emma's room," Tom said quietly. "My daughter. She died 6 years ago. She was 7. He told us the rest in fragments, his voice breaking. How Emma had loved playing in the shed. How she'd arrange her toys in circles and make up elaborate games. How she died in a car accident on the way back from visiting the cabin one December. How he hadn't been able to bring himself to clear out her toys or change anything about the property. "Sometimes other guests mention things," he said. "Small things going missing and showing up in different places. Sounds at night. I always tell myself it's nothing. But you're not the first to leave early." We never went back, obviously. Tom refunded us completely and apologized profusely. He said he was going to take the cabin off the rental market and decide what to do with the property. But here's the thing that haunts me even now. Before we left, while we were throwing our bags in the car in a panic, I looked back at the cabin one last time, just for a second. There was a small face in the bedroom window. Watching us leave, Claire says I imagined it, that my mind was playing tricks in the dark and the fear. Maybe she's right. But I still see that face sometimes when I close my eyes. And I think about those footprints appearing every night in the fresh snow, getting closer and closer to our window. I think about how Tom said we weren't the first guests to leave early. And I wonder about the people who stayed. Story 2. My neighbor stopped clearing his driveway. The shadow still moves past his windows at exactly 3:07 every morning. I know because I've started watching for it, timing it, documenting it like somehow that'll make it make sense. The police say the house is empty. They've been inside twice now, but I know what I see. I should probably start from the beginning. I moved into my house in October, a small 2-bedroom in a quiet suburban neighborhood. The kind of place where people know each other's names and wave when you drive by. My next-door neighbor was a man named Carl Dennison, Late 60s, retired, lived alone. I met him my first week there when he came over to introduce himself and bring me a welcome basket with some local honey and homemade jam. He seemed nice enough, a little intense maybe. The kind of guy who takes pride in his property to an almost obsessive degree. His lawn was perfect, his driveway was always spotless, his gutters were cleaned regularly. He mentioned that he'd lived in that house for 34 years, and you could tell he cared about every inch of it. "I like to keep things orderly," he said, smiling but not really smiling. "I hope you'll do the same. Property values, you understand." I assured him I would, even though I'm not exactly the type to obsess over lawn care. But I got the impression Carl was someone you wanted to stay on good terms with, so I made an effort. I kept my yard neat, brought my trash cans in on time, parked my car properly in my driveway. For the first month or so, everything was fine. Carl would wave from his yard. Sometimes we'd chat about the weather or the neighborhood. He always seemed to be outside doing something, raking leaves, trimming hedges, washing his car. I got the sense that maintaining his property was pretty much his entire life. Then December hit, and the first real snow came. I woke up that morning to find about 4 inches on the ground and Carl already outside, meticulously clearing his driveway with a snowblower. It was 6:15 in the morning. I remember checking the clock and groaning, rolling over and trying to go back to sleep despite the noise. By the time I got up at 8, Carl's driveway was completely clear. Not a flake of snow left, the pavement visible and dry. My driveway, by contrast, looked like an untouched winter wonderland. I felt a little guilty, like I was letting down the neighborhood or something. This pattern continued through the next 2 snowfalls. Carl would be out there within hours of the snow stopping, clearing everything perfectly while my driveway stayed buried for a day or two until I had time to deal with it. Then one Thursday morning in mid-December, something changed. I woke up to find we'd gotten about 6 inches overnight, a pretty heavy snowfall for our area. I looked out my window expecting to see Carl already hard at work, but his driveway was buried, untouched. His car was completely covered. I figured maybe he was sleeping in or not feeling well. He was older after all, and it was pretty cold out. But as the day went on, his driveway stayed covered. That night, another inch or 2 fell, adding to the pile. By Saturday, it had been 3 days, and Carl's driveway was a solid mound of accumulated snow. His car hadn't moved. I hadn't seen him outside once. I started to get worried. I walked over and knocked on his door, but there was no answer. His lights were on inside. I could see the glow through the curtains, but he didn't come to the door. I tried calling out, "Carl, you okay?" Nothing. I told myself he'd probably gone to visit family for the holidays. Maybe he'd caught a ride with someone and left his car here. It happened. People travel. But something nagged at me. Carl had never mentioned family, and he was so obsessive about his property. Would he really just leave it unattended during winter, knowing snow would pile up? That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Carl, about how his lights were still on, about how weird it was that he hadn't said anything about leaving. Around 2:30 a.m. I got up to get some water, and that's when I glanced out my kitchen window. Carl's house was dark except for a single window upstairs. His bedroom, I assumed. And there, moving slowly past the window, was a shadow. A clear silhouette of someone walking by. My heart jumped. He was home. He'd been home this whole time. I felt relieved and annoyed in equal measure. Here I was, worrying about him, and he was fine, just being weird and reclusive. Maybe he'd hurt his back and couldn't clear the driveway. Maybe he'd decided to finally relax his obsessive standards. Whatever. Not my business. I went back to bed, but the next night I saw it again. 3 a.m. this time. The same slow shadow moving past the same upstairs window. The exact same pace, the same steady movement from one side of the window to the other. And the night after that. 3:07 a.m., the same thing. It became a pattern I couldn't ignore. Every night between 3 and 3:15 in the morning, that shadow would pass by Carl's bedroom window. Always the same speed, always the same path, like clockwork. I started timing it. 3:07 a.m., almost to the second, every single night. Meanwhile, Carl's driveway continued to accumulate snow. We got another storm, then another. By Christmas, there was probably 2 feet of packed snow covering his entire driveway and car. No one in the neighborhood had seen him. His mail was piling up in his mailbox. I finally called the non-emergency police line and asked for a wellness check. 2 officers showed up that afternoon. I watched from my window as they knocked on Carl's door, called out, walked around the property. Eventually, they came over to talk to me. "The house appears empty," one of them said. "No answer at the door, no signs of activity. We looked in the windows. Place looks tidy but empty. Does he have family nearby?" "I don't know," I admitted. "He never mentioned anyone." "Any idea where he might have gone?" I hesitated. "I've seen someone moving around inside at night, a shadow in the upstairs window." The officers exchanged a look. "When was the last time you saw this?" "Last night, around 3 a.m. They asked a few more questions, then said they'd file a report and try to track down Carl's emergency contacts. They suggested maybe the shadow was just headlights from passing cars reflecting strangely. Or maybe tree branches moving in the wind. But I knew what I'd seen. That night I stayed up specifically to watch. At 3:07 a.m., right on schedule, the shadow appeared. Slow, deliberate movement from one side of the bedroom window to the other, taking maybe 8 or 9 seconds to complete the path. Then nothing until the next night. I took a video on my phone and sent it to the police. They called me back the next day and said they'd gotten permission from Carl's emergency contact, a distant cousin in another state, to enter the property. I watched from my window as they went inside. They were in there for maybe 20 minutes. When they came out, they looked confused. "Place is completely empty," one of them told me. "I mean, it's furnished, but there's no one there. No signs anyone's been there recently. Beds made, dishes are put away, everything's neat. We checked every room, every closet, the basement, the attic. Nobody's there. But we saw your video," he said, not unkindly. "I don't have an explanation for it. Maybe it's something with the way light hits the window. But there's definitely no one in that house." They left and Carl's house sat there, lights on, driveway buried in snow. That night, 3:07 a.m., the shadow appeared again. Exactly the same. Same speed, same path. I started losing sleep over it. I'd lie in bed watching the clock tick toward 3 a.m., unable to stop myself from getting up and looking out the window. And every single night, there it was. That slow, shuffling shadow moving past Carl's bedroom window. After a week of this, I couldn't take it anymore. I know this sounds crazy, but I went over there at 2:30 in the morning. Let myself through the side gate Carl always kept unlocked and positioned myself in his backyard where I could see both the window from outside and the interior of the room. At 3:07, I watched the shadow pass by the window from inside, but there was no one there. I could see into the room clearly. The bed was made. The room was empty. But the shadow moved across the window anyway, cast by nothing, moving steadily from one side to the other like someone walking a well-worn path. I ran home and didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next day, I contacted the cousin myself. I got his number from the police report, probably not entirely legal, but I was desperate for answers. His name was Tom Dennison, and when I explained who I was, he went quiet. "Carl stopped returning my calls in early December," Tom said. "I just assumed he was busy with the holidays. We weren't close. Do you know where he might have gone?" "Gone?" Tom laughed, but it was a bitter sound. Carl never went anywhere. That house was his whole life. He barely left the property except for groceries. He certainly wouldn't have gone somewhere in December without telling anyone. The police said the house was empty. Another long pause. Yeah, they told me that too. But here's the thing. Carl had this routine. Every night, 3 a.m. like clockwork, he'd get up and do a security check of the house. Walk through every room, check every lock, look out every window. He'd been doing it for years, ever since someone broke into his garage back in the 90s. He was obsessed with it. My blood went cold. What route did he take? Started upstairs in his bedroom, walked the upstairs hall. Tom's voice trailed off. Why? I told him about the shadow, about the exact timing every single night at 3:07. Tom didn't say anything for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was shaking. I think something happened to Carl. And I think whatever it was, he's still trying to keep his routine. They never found Carl. The house has been sitting there for 3 weeks now, lights on, driveway buried under layers of snow and ice. The cousin is dealing with the property, trying to figure out what to do with it. But every night at 3:07 a.m., that shadow still moves past the bedroom window. I don't sleep well anymore. I've started looking at other neighborhoods, thinking about moving. But here's what really terrifies me. 2 nights ago, I saw a second shadow. Same time, same window. But this time, there were 2 of them. Moving at the same pace, following the same path. And Carl's house isn't the only one with lights on at night anymore. 3 doors down, Mrs. Patterson's car hasn't moved in a week. Her driveway is filling with snow. And last night, at 3:07 a.m., I saw a shadow pass by her bedroom window too. Story 3. I worked night security at a mall in December. I can hear it breathing right now while I'm recording this. It's standing on the other side of this security office door, and every few seconds there's this wet, rattling sound like someone's lungs are full of fluid. I don't know if I'm going to make it until sunrise. But if something happens to me, someone needs to know what's been going on here. My name is Tyler Brennan, and I've worked night security at Riverside Mall for 3 years. It's not a glamorous job. Mostly it's walking empty corridors, checking that stores are locked up, making sure no one's sleeping in the bathrooms or trying to break in through the loading docks. During the day, this place is packed with shoppers, especially in December. But at night, after the stores close at 9 and the cleaning crews finish around midnight, it's just me and 23,000 square feet of empty retail space. I've gotten used to it. The sounds the building makes as it settles, the hum of the HVAC system, the weird echoes in the food court. After 3 years, none of it bothers me anymore. This place has become almost comfortable in its emptiness. Or it was until 2 weeks ago. It started on December 1st. I remember the date specifically because that's when the mall puts up the big Christmas decorations. The huge tree in the center court, the garland wrapped around all the railings, the light displays, the sound system playing holiday music during business hours. But we turn all that off at closing. We have to. Leaving everything running all night would be a waste of electricity, and the music would drive the night staff insane. So at 9:30 p.m., after the last shoppers leave, someone from maintenance shuts down the holiday sound system. Except that night at 2:17 a.m., I heard Christmas music. I was in the north wing checking the doors on the sporting goods store when I heard it. Faint but unmistakable, that classic version of Deck the Halls that every mall plays 1,000 times a season. It was coming from somewhere deeper in the building. I followed the sound to the toy store. Happyland Toys, one of those big warehouse-style toy retailers that always gets mobbed around the holidays. The music was definitely coming from inside. The store was dark except for the emergency lighting, but I could see well enough to tell that everything looked normal. Aisles neat, Registers shut down. Security gate pulled across the entrance. But that music kept playing, the same song looping endlessly. I checked my tablet. It shows me the status of all the electrical systems in the building. According to the system, the toy store's audio was off. Had been off since 9:30. I radioed Jerry, the maintenance guy who works nights. "Hey, you hearing this music?" "What music?" "In the toy store. Sounds like the Christmas playlist." He sighed. "Probably a display toy or something. They've got a million things that play music this time of year. I'll check it out in the morning." That made sense. Some singing Santa or musical snow globe that had gotten triggered somehow. I made a note of it and moved on. But 20 minutes later, walking past the toy store again on my rounds, the music was still playing. Still the same song. And when I stopped to listen closely, I realized something that made my skin prickle. The song wasn't coming from inside the store. It was coming from the security camera. I pulled up the camera feed on my tablet. The toy store has 4 cameras: entrance, back corner, center aisle, and register area. I switched to the center aisle camera. The view was exactly what I expected. Empty aisles, dim lighting, shelves full of toys. But I could hear that music clearly through the tablet speaker, even though there was no visible source. And then I saw it. At the far end of the aisle, right at the edge of the camera's field of view, there was a figure, standing completely still, facing the camera. It looked like a person, humanoid shape, roughly adult-sized, but the details were wrong. The proportions were slightly off, the posture was too rigid, and it was perfectly, impossibly still. No breathing movement, no shifting weight, nothing. I stared at that image for a solid 30 seconds, my heart hammering. Then I switched to another camera view, then back to the center aisle. The figure was still there. Same position, same unnatural stillness. I grabbed my flashlight and radio and headed for the toy store, moving fast but trying not to panic. The music was louder now, echoing through the empty mall. When I reached the security gate, I pulled out my keys with shaking hands. The music stopped, just cut off mid-note, leaving only silence. I stood there, breathing hard, listening. Nothing. I shined my flashlight through the gate into the store. From this angle, I couldn't see the center aisle where the figure had been, but I could see enough to tell the place looked empty. I should have opened that gate and gone inside. That's my job. But something about the way that music had just stopped the second I arrived, like whatever was playing it knew I was there. I couldn't make myself do it. I checked the camera feed again. The center aisle was empty, no figure, just toys and shadows. I told myself it had been a mannequin or a large display I'd somehow missed. Cameras can play tricks, especially in low light. I filed an incident report and finished my shift. But I knew I'd seen something. The next night, I kept watching the toy store cameras, checking them every time I passed. Everything looked normal until just after 2 a.m. That's when I heard the music again. Same song, same loop. Deck the halls playing endlessly from somewhere in the toy store. I pulled up the camera feed, already knowing what I'd see. The figure was there again, center aisle. But this time, it was closer to the camera, maybe 10 feet closer than the night before. Still perfectly motionless, still facing the camera directly. My hands were sweating. I switched between camera views, trying to get a different angle, trying to see more details. But every time I switched back to the center aisle camera, the figure was there exactly the same. I called Jerry again. "I need you to come look at something." "Little busy, man, can it wait?" "No, it really can't." He met me outside the toy store 5 minutes later, and I showed him the camera feed. "What am I looking at?" he said. "That figure, center aisle, you see it?" Jerry squinted at the screen. "That's probably one of those life-size character displays. They've got a bunch of them this year. Does it look like a display to you?" He studied it for a moment. I mean, kinda? Hard to tell on camera. And the music? As if on cue, the music stopped. Dead silence. Jerry and I looked at each other. That's weird, he admitted. We unlocked the gate and went inside together, flashlights cutting through the darkness. The toy store felt different at night, all those plastic faces and glass eyes catching the light, making it seem like we were surrounded by frozen spectators. We made our way to the center aisle, empty. No figure, no display, nothing that matched what I'd seen on camera. Just shelves of toys stretching into darkness. Maybe it was a customer who got locked in, Jerry suggested. Hid until closing, then left through the fire exit. The fire alarms didn't go off. Could have slipped out when someone opened a door for deliveries. It was possible, technically, but it didn't explain why the figure had been standing there motionless for the entire time I'd watched it, or why it had been closer than the night before. We left the store, locked it back up, and Jerry went back to his maintenance work. I continued my rounds, checking the feed compulsively every few minutes. At 3:20 a.m., the figure appeared again. This time it was right in front of the camera, so close I could almost make out details. Almost. It still had that wrong quality, like looking at something through dirty glass. The features seemed blurred, indistinct, but I could tell it was looking at the camera, looking at me. The music started again. That same goddamn song. I stood in the middle of the mall staring at my tablet, feeling ice spread through my chest. The figure didn't move. It just stood there, filling the camera frame, while Deck the Halls played and played and played. I didn't go back to the toy store that night. I told myself I'd deal with it during the day shift, let the manager handle it. This was above my pay grade, but the third night I had to work again. And I knew before I even checked the cameras what I'd find. At 2:03 a.m. the music started. I pulled up the feed, my hands shaking so hard I almost dropped the tablet. The figure was outside the toy store, standing in the main concourse directly in front of the security gate, facing the camera mounted above the entrance. Closer. So much closer. I could see more details now. It was wearing clothes, or something that looked like clothes, a dark coat or jacket. But the face was still wrong, still blurred, like someone had smudged a photograph. I switched to the concourse cameras, trying to track it from different angles. It was on every camera, not moving, just standing there, appearing in frame after frame as I cycled through views. Always in the same position relative to each camera, always facing it directly, like it knew exactly where to stand to be seen. The music was getting louder. I realized it wasn't coming from the toy store anymore. It was coming from every speaker in the building. The mall's entire sound system, which should have been completely shut down, was blasting Deck the Halls at full volume. I called Jerry, called my supervisor, called mall security dispatch. No one answered. I was alone in 23,000 square feet with something that shouldn't exist, and that fucking song playing so loud I could barely think. I ran to the security office and locked the door. That's where I am now. It's been 4 hours. The music finally stopped around 4 a.m., but I can still hear that breathing on the other side of the door. Wet, labored, patient. I checked the cameras on my tablet. The concourses are empty, the stores are dark, everything looks normal. But the camera outside the security office shows something standing there. Right there, inches from the door. I can see its shadow in the gap at the bottom. I can hear it breathing. It's almost 6 a.m. Sunrise is in 40 minutes. The day shift arrives at 7. I just need to last a little longer. But I keep thinking about how each night it gets closer. How it knows where the cameras are, how it appeared outside the store on the third night. This is the fourth night. I don't know what happens on the 5th night, but I quit this job. If I make it until sunrise, I'm never coming back to this mall. If you're reading this, if something happened to me, you need to understand. There's something in Riverside Mall. Something that wakes up after closing during December. Something that's been getting closer every night, learning the layout, tracking the cameras, following a pattern I was too slow to recognize. The breathing just stopped. I can't hear anything now. I'm afraid to check the camera. I'm afraid to look at the gap under the door. But I can feel it, right there, on the other side, waiting for me to open up. The sun's almost up, just 30 more minutes. I can make it 30 more minutes. I have to. Story 4. The Airbnb had a locked room. I didn't look inside. That's the part people don't believe when I tell this story. They think I must have opened that door, must have seen what was in there, but I'm telling you I didn't. I just ran. And sometimes I think that not knowing is worse than any truth could have been. It was a work trip. December 10th through the 14th, flying into Minneapolis for a conference. I'd booked the Airbnb 3 weeks in advance. A small house on the edge of town, well-reviewed, good price, close enough to the convention center but far enough to feel quiet. The host, Laura, had nearly 5 stars and dozens of positive reviews. People praised how clean the place was, how responsive she was, how comfortable the bed was, all the normal stuff you look for. I arrived on a Sunday evening. It was already dark and starting to snow, that dry December snow that blows around like powder. Laura had messaged me earlier with instructions for the lockbox, so I let myself in. The house looked exactly like the photos, small but tidy. Living room with a couch and TV, kitchen with basic appliances, bathroom with fresh towels already set out. The bedroom was at the end of a short hallway. Queen bed, dresser, lamp, a print of a forest landscape on the wall. Everything was clean and impersonal in that specific way Airbnbs are, like someone had carefully removed every trace of actual life. I dropped my suitcase and went to explore the rest of the place. That's when I noticed the second bedroom. It was right across the hall from where I'd be sleeping. But unlike every other door in the house, this one had 3 deadbolts installed. On the outside, 3 heavy-duty deadbolts, the kind you'd use on an exterior door. The kind meant to keep something in, not out. All 3 were locked. I stood there staring at those bolts, feeling uneasy in a way I couldn't quite articulate. Who puts 3 locks on the outside of an interior door? I tried to remember if the listing had mentioned this, if there'd been any explanation in the house rules or description. Nothing came to mind. I texted Laura, "Hey, just got in. Quick question, what's the locked room across from the bedroom?" She responded within 2 minutes. "Oh, that's just storage. Sorry, should have mentioned. I keep cleaning supplies and extra furniture in there. Nothing exciting. Hope you have a great stay." Her response was friendly and casual. Normal. And her explanation made sense, sort of. This was her house and she was renting out part of it. Of course, she'd lock away her personal stuff. But 3 deadbolts? I told myself I was being paranoid. It had been a long travel day. I was tired and I was letting my imagination run wild. People are quirky about their storage sometimes. It was fine. I ordered delivery, ate dinner while catching up on emails, then went to bed around 11. The house was quiet except for the wind outside and the occasional creak of old wood settling. I fell asleep easily. I woke up at 2:40 a.m. to a sound. At first, I couldn't place it. I lay there in the dark, trying to identify what had pulled me out of sleep. Then I heard it again. Scratching. Soft but persistent, like fingernails on wood. It was coming from the hallway. I got up and opened my bedroom door slowly, listening. The hallway was dark, just the faint glow of a nightlight in the bathroom. The scratching continued and my stomach dropped as I realized where it was coming from. The locked room. Something was scratching on the inside of that door. I stood frozen, watching the door like it might suddenly burst open. The scratching was rhythmic, methodical. Scratch, 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 pause. Scratch, 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 pause. Over and over. I pulled out my phone and texted Laura. "I'm hearing noises from the locked room, scratching sounds. Is someone else here?" No response. It was almost 3 a.m. She was probably asleep. The scratching continued for another 5 minutes, then stopped abruptly. Silence settled back over the house, so complete I could hear my own heartbeat. I went back to bed but didn't sleep. I lay there watching the ceiling, listening for any sound until sunlight started filtering through the curtains around 7:30. Laura texted me back at 8. "Oh no. I'm so sorry, I should have warned you. There's a family of squirrels that got into the walls last month. The exterminator is coming next week. They're totally harmless, but they can be noisy at night. So sorry for the disturbance." Again, her explanation was reasonable. Squirrels in the walls was a common problem in older houses, especially in winter when animals looked for warm places to nest. And the scratching I'd heard could easily have been squirrels, except squirrels don't scratch in patterns, and they don't pause in perfect intervals. But I was only there for 4 more nights, and I had a busy conference schedule. I decided to let it go. That second night I heard it again. 2:40 a.m., almost to the minute, the same rhythmic scratching coming from behind that locked door. This time I got up and stood right outside the door, listening carefully. The scratching was definitely coming from inside the room, but it was too deliberate for squirrels. Too slow, too intentional. I pressed my ear against the door. Behind the scratching, I could hear something else. A wet, raspy sound, like breathing. I jerked back from the door, my heart slamming against my ribs. That was not a squirrel. I grabbed my phone and called Laura. It went to voicemail. "Hey, this is Kayla, your guest. I'm hearing those sounds again from the locked room, and I don't think it's squirrels. I think there might be someone in there. Please call me back." The scratching stopped. Sudden, complete silence. I waited in the hallway for 10 minutes, but there was no more sound. Eventually, I went back to bed, but I pushed the dresser in front of my bedroom door first. Laura called me at 6 a.m., waking me up. "Hi, Kayla, I'm so sorry about last night. I got your message. I promise you there's no one in that room. It's completely locked, and I'm the only one with the key. It's really just storage, and those squirrels can make some very weird sounds. I've heard them myself, and they can almost sound human sometimes. But I completely understand if you're uncomfortable. I can refund you and help you find another place." She sounded genuinely concerned and apologetic. And maybe she was right. Maybe I was overreacting to weird house sounds and letting my imagination fill in the gaps. I told her I'd stay. I only had 2 more nights, and finding a new place would be a hassle. But that day, while I was at the conference, I couldn't stop thinking about that locked room, about those 3 deadbolts, about the scratching that stopped the second I called Laura, like whatever was in there knew I was reporting it. When I got back to the house that evening around 6, I stood in the hallway for a long time, staring at that door. The deadbolts were still locked. Everything looked exactly the same, but now that I was looking closely, I noticed something I'd missed before. The bottom of the door had scratches on it, deep gouges in the wood like something had been clawing at it from the inside. Old scratches, not fresh, but definitely there. I took photos, I don't know why. Some instinct that I might need evidence later. That third night, I barely slept. I lay in bed with my phone in my hand, waiting for 2:40 a.m. When it came, I was ready. The scratching started right on schedule, but this time there was something else. A soft thudding sound, like something hitting the door, not hard, just persistent. Thud, scratch, thud, scratch. And then I heard it. A voice, muffled, distorted by the door, but unmistakably human. "Help! I was out of bed in seconds, grabbing my suitcase, throwing my things into it with shaking hands. I didn't care about the noise I was making. I didn't care about anything except getting out of that house. "Help me." The voice was clearer now, desperate. "Please, help me." I ran down the hallway, dragging my suitcase, fumbling with the front door lock. Behind me, the locked room door rattled. The deadbolts held, but something was pulling on that door from the inside, pulling hard. "Don't leave," the voice called. "Please, she'll come back. Please don't leave." I got the front door open and ran to my rental car, throwing my suitcase in the back. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely get the key in the ignition. As I pulled away, I looked back at the house. The lights were still on. And in the window next to the front door, I saw a face. Just for a second. Laura's face. Watching me leave, but Laura was supposed to live across town. She told me this was a house she rented out, not where she lived. I drove straight to a hotel and checked in for the rest of my stay. I tried to report what had happened to Airbnb to the police, but what could I tell them? I heard scratching. Someone said help and I ran. I didn't actually see anything. I didn't open the door. I just ran. The police did a welfare check. They said the house was empty and all the doors were locked. They talked to Laura, who said I'd seemed paranoid and unstable, that she'd offered me a refund when I complained about normal house sounds. The listing is still active. I checked yesterday. Laura still has 5 stars. Recent reviews still say how clean and comfortable the place is, how responsive Laura is. But there's one new review from 2 weeks ago, a 1-star review that just says, "Heard disturbing sounds at night from a locked room. Host was dismissive, left early, would not recommend." Laura responded, "I'm sorry you were disturbed by the squirrels in the walls. Exterminator has resolved the issue. Thanks for your feedback." I think about that voice a lot. Help me. Please help me. I think about how the scratching happened every night at the same time. I think about those 3 deadbolts on the outside of the door and those old gouges in the wood. And I think about how I didn't open that door. I just ran. Sometimes I wonder if I should have stayed, if I should have broken those deadbolts and looked inside, if someone needed help and I just abandoned them. But then I remember Laura's face in that window watching me leave, and I think maybe running was the only reason I made it out. I'll never know what was in that room, and that uncertainty haunts me more than any answer could. Story 5. Something followed me home from the Christmas market. I found another one this morning. It was hanging from my bathroom mirror, dangling from a piece of thin red thread. A wooden ornament, hand-carved, showing me standing at my bathroom sink, showing me from today wearing the pajamas I'm wearing right now. I haven't left my apartment in 4 days. The doors are locked, the windows are locked, but they keep appearing. Let me start at the beginning, before I stopped sleeping, before I stopped feeling safe anywhere. It was December 7th, a Thursday evening. I'd been working late all week and feeling burned out, so I decided to do something festive to lift my spirits. There's this big outdoor Christmas market that sets up downtown every year. You know the kind. Rows of little wooden stalls selling handmade crafts, hot chocolate, roasted chestnuts, all decorated with string lights and evergreen garland. I'd been meaning to go all season but kept putting it off. I went alone. My friends were all busy, and I convinced myself it would be nice to just wander and enjoy the atmosphere without having to coordinate with anyone. Looking back, I wish I'd waited. I wish I'd never gone at all. The market was crowded, full of couples and families bundled up against the cold, everyone's breath visible in the freezing air. Christmas music played from speakers hidden among the stalls. Everything smelled like cinnamon and wood smoke. It was exactly the kind of cozy, festive environment I'd been craving. I wandered through the stalls, looking at jewelry and candles and knitted scarves. I bought a cup of hot cider and some chocolate truffles. I was actually relaxing for the first time in weeks. Then I reached the edge of the market square where the crowds thinned out. There was a stall there I hadn't noticed on my first pass, tucked back slightly from the others, half hidden by shadows despite the string lights everywhere else. The stall had a simple wooden sign that read "Hand-carved ornaments." An old man sat behind the table wearing a dark coat and a wool cap. His table was covered with wooden ornaments, dozens of them, all hanging from small hooks on a display board. They were intricately carved: animals, trees, stars, angels. The craftsmanship was beautiful. I stopped to look, admiring the detail work. The old man watched me but didn't speak. His eyes were pale and unsettling, but I told myself he was just shy or reserved. I was about to move on when he reached under the table and pulled out another ornament. He held it out to me without a word. It was a carved figure of a person, a woman, wearing a coat and scarf, holding a cup, just like I was at that exact moment, wearing my face. I stared at it, confused. The detail was impossible. It looked exactly like me, down to the way my hair was pulled back, the pattern on my scarf. Even the specific style of cup I was holding from the cider stall. "How did you?" I started to ask. But the old man just smiled, not a friendly smile, more like he was amused by a private joke, and pressed the ornament into my hand. "For you," he said. His voice was rough, like he hadn't spoken in a long time. "I can't accept this," I said, trying to hand it back. "How much do you want for it?" He shook his head. "Gift. You'll need it." Before I could respond, someone called my name. I turned, startled, but it was just someone who looked vaguely familiar walking by, not actually talking to me. When I turned back, the old man was gone. Not just away from the stall, completely gone. The entire stall was gone. Where the wooden table and ornament display had been, there was just empty space and the back wall of another vendor's tent. I stood there holding the wooden ornament, my heart beating too fast. People walked past me, shopping and laughing, completely oblivious. I looked around frantically, but there was no sign of the stall or the old man. It's not possible, I told myself. I'd been standing right there. He'd been real. The stall had been real, but now it was just gone. I shoved the ornament in my coat pocket and left the market. I felt shaken in a way I couldn't explain. The whole walk home, I kept looking over my shoulder, feeling like someone was watching me. When I got back to my apartment, I took the ornament out and examined it under better light. The detail was even more disturbing up close. It really did look exactly like me, captured in that precise moment at the market. Every detail was perfect. My expression, my posture, even the little coffee stain on my coat sleeve that I'd gotten earlier that day. I put it in my junk drawer, unable to throw it away but not wanting to look at it. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the old man's words. "You'll need it." What the hell did that mean? The next morning I found the second ornament. It was hanging from my front door handle, on the inside of my apartment. I lived on the 4th floor of a secure building. You needed a key fob to get in the front entrance, and there were cameras in the lobby and hallways. My apartment door had been locked all night. I checked it before bed like I always do, but there it was. Another wooden figure hanging from a thin red thread. This one showed me sitting on my couch watching TV, wearing the pajamas I'd worn the night before. My hands were shaking as I took it down. Someone had been inside my apartment while I slept. Someone had been close enough to see exactly what I was wearing, what I was doing. I called my building manager immediately. He came up and checked my door, my windows, everything. No signs of forced entry. He reviewed the hallway camera footage. No one had entered or exited my apartment all night. "Maybe it was there yesterday and you just didn't notice," he suggested. But I knew it hadn't been. That door handle had been empty when I'd locked up last night. I called the police non-emergency line. They sent an officer who took a report and basically told me the same thing. No signs of break-in. Probably some weird prank by someone who had access to my apartment at some point. Maybe an ex-boyfriend, a maintenance worker. But I knew it wasn't that. This was connected to the market, to that old man, to that first ornament. I stayed with my friend Rachel that night. I didn't tell her the real reason, just said my heating was broken. But even at her apartment, I barely slept. The third ornament appeared on my car. I'd parked in my building's underground garage. When I went to leave for work, there it was, hanging from my rearview mirror. This one showed me walking down the street, the exact street near Rachel's apartment where I'd walked that morning. Someone was following me. Someone who could carve these impossibly detailed ornaments and place them wherever I went, no matter how secure the location. I started documenting everything. I took photos of each ornament, wrote down exactly where I'd found them and when. I reviewed my building's security footage myself. Nothing. No one suspicious. No one who didn't belong. The ornaments kept appearing. One a day, like clockwork. On my desk at work, showing me at my computer. In my gym bag, showing me on the treadmill. In my mailbox, showing me checking my mail. Each one depicted me in a recent moment, often from the same day. The detail was always perfect, and I never saw anyone placing them. I went back to the Christmas market, desperate to find that stall, to find the old man and make him explain, but there was no sign of it. I asked other vendors if they'd seen a stall selling carved ornaments. No one knew what I was talking about. I stopped going out except for absolutely necessary trips. I stopped seeing friends. I changed my locks, installed extra security cameras, covered my windows. The ornaments kept appearing in my refrigerator, under my pillow, in my bathroom cabinet, in my coat pockets, each one showing me in increasingly private moments. Me in the shower, me sleeping, me crying. I was being watched constantly, and I had no idea how or by whom. Yesterday, I found one that almost made me pass out. It was on my kitchen counter, and it showed me holding a different ornament and looking at it with an expression of horror. It was showing me from yesterday, looking at the ornament from 2 days ago. The carver wasn't just watching me, they were staying ahead of me, predicting my actions, showing me moments that had just happened, implying they'd known what I would do before I did it. Today's ornament, the one in my bathroom, showed me from this morning, wearing pajamas I'd just put on. I'm writing this now because I don't know what else to do. The police think I'm paranoid. My friends think I'm having a breakdown. But these ornaments are real. I have photos, I have evidence. Someone is in my life watching me every moment, and I can't find them, I can't stop them, I can't escape them. I keep thinking about what the old man said. You'll need it. I took out that first ornament, the one from the market. I've been staring at it, trying to understand what he meant. And then I noticed something I'd missed before. Carved into the base of the figure in tiny letters almost too small to read. Day 1. I checked the other ornaments. Each one has a number carved into the base. Day 2, Day 3. Day 4, today's ornament says Day 8. There are 12 hooks on the ornament display board I can see in my photos of the first ornament. 12 spaces, 8 are filled. I have 4 more coming. I don't know what happens after Day 12. But I know something is going to happen. This isn't random. This is building towards something. Tonight is Day 8. 4 more nights. I've stopped sleeping, I've stopped eating. I sit here with all the lights on, watching my doors and windows, waiting for Day 9's ornament to appear. I keep looking at that first ornament, the one that started all this. Me at the market holding my cup of cider captured in perfect detail. And I've started to notice something else about it. Behind the figure of me carved so faintly I almost didn't see it, there's another shape, a shadow, standing right behind me. The same shadow that I've started seeing in every ornament. Always in the background, always just behind me. getting closer with each day. I measured the distance. On day 1, the shadow was about 6 feet behind me. On day 4, it was 4 feet. On day 7, it was 2 feet. On day 8, the one from this morning, the shadow is right behind me, touching me. 4 more days until day 12. I don't think I'm going to survive to see day 13. If someone finds this, if something happens to me, please look for the ornaments. They'll tell you everything. They'll show you exactly what happened, carved in perfect detail by someone who was there for every moment. Someone who was always right behind me, someone I never saw. Story 6. We got stranded in a snowstorm. We never made footprints to that house. That's what I can't stop thinking about. We walked through 2 feet of snow across an open field in a blizzard. But when I looked out the window from inside, there were no footprints leading from the road to the front door. Like we'd appeared out of thin air. Like we'd always been meant to arrive. It was December 18th. My boyfriend Derek and I were driving back from visiting his parents upstate. About a 4-hour drive through rural areas, lots of back roads, small towns spaced far apart. We'd left around 3 in the afternoon, planning to be home by 7. The snow started around 4:30. Not too bad at first, just light flurries that looked pretty against the gray sky. But within 20 minutes, it intensified into a full-blown storm. Heavy, wet snow that stuck to everything and made visibility almost zero. Derek slowed down, gripping the steering wheel tighter. We should find somewhere to wait this out. But we were on a particularly desolate stretch of road. Nothing but fields and forest on either side. No towns for miles. We decided to keep pushing forward slowly, hoping to reach the next town before conditions got worse. That's when the car made a grinding sound and rolled to a stop. Derek tried to restart it. Nothing. He tried again. The engine turned over weakly, then died completely. "Shit," he muttered, pulling out his phone. No signal. We were in a dead zone. I checked my phone too. Same thing. No service, no GPS, no way to call for help. The snow was coming down so heavily we could barely see 10 feet in front of us. The temperature was dropping fast. We could feel the cold seeping into the car already. "We can't stay here," I said, "or we'll freeze." Derek looked around, squinting through the windshield. "I thought I saw lights. Off to the left, maybe half a mile back." I didn't remember seeing any lights, but I was willing to try anything. We bundled up in our coats and scarves, took our emergency flashlight from the glove box and stepped out into the storm. The wind hit us immediately, stealing our breath. The snow was already shin deep and still falling. We could barely see the road beneath us. Derek took my hand and we started walking in the direction he thought he'd seen lights. Every step was difficult, our feet sinking into the snow, the wind pushing us back. My face went numb within minutes. I don't know how long we walked. Time felt distorted in that white void with nothing but snow and wind and the weak beam of our flashlight. 10 minutes? 20? It felt like hours. Then through the swirling snow I saw it, a dark shape emerging from the storm. A house. It was an old farmhouse, 2 stories, with a peaked roof and a front porch. Lights glowed warmly in the windows. Smoke rose from the chimney. It looked like something from a Christmas card, impossibly cozy against the hostile storm. "Thank God," Derek breathed. We stumbled up to the front door and knocked. The sound felt muffled by the wind. The door opened immediately, like someone had been waiting right there. A woman stood in the doorway, middle-aged, wearing a floral dress that looked decades out of style. She smiled at us warmly. "Oh, you poor things, come in quickly now." We didn't need to be told twice. We practically fell through the doorway into the blessed warmth of the house. The interior was shockingly warm after the cold outside. There was a fire crackling in a large stone fireplace. The house smelled like wood smoke and baked bread. Everything looked clean but old-fashioned. Lace doilies on the furniture, floral wallpaper, a rotary phone on a side table. "Thank you so much," I said, my teeth chattering. "Our car broke down and we couldn't get cell service." "Cell service?" The woman looked confused for a moment, then smiled again. "Oh, of course. Yes, we don't get much of that out here, no matter. You're safe now. Let me get you some hot soup." A man appeared from another room, older, wearing suspenders and a flannel shirt. "Travelers?" he said, nodding at us. "Road's not safe tonight." "Our car died," Derek explained. "We were hoping we could maybe use your phone to call for help." "Tomorrow," the man said firmly. "Storm's too bad, no one's coming tonight. You'll stay here, wait it out." It wasn't really a question. And honestly, we were so grateful to be out of the storm that we didn't argue. The woman, she told us to call her Margaret, brought us bowls of hot soup and fresh bread. We sat at their kitchen table, warming up, feeling the life come back into our frozen fingers and toes. There was a boy, too, maybe 12 years old, quiet, sitting in the corner by the fireplace. He watched us with dark, serious eyes, but didn't speak. The house was exactly what you'd picture an old farmhouse to be. Wood floors, simple furniture, family photos in frames on the walls. Everything looked well-maintained but dated, like the family had decorated in the 1970s and never changed anything. "Have you lived here long?" I asked, trying to make conversation. "Oh, very long," Margaret said, smiling. "This house has been in our family for generations." We ate in relative silence. The family didn't talk much, but they were attentive and kind. The warmth and food were making me drowsy. The stress of the storm was catching up to me. Derek kept trying the rotary phone, but the line was dead. "Storm must have knocked it out," the man, who told us to call him Joseph, said. "What about cell phones?" Derek asked. "Do either of you have one?" Margaret and Joseph exchanged a look I couldn't quite read. "We don't hold with those," Joseph said. "Too complicated." It was a little odd, but we were in rural farmland. Plenty of older folks out here probably didn't bother with modern technology. Margaret showed us to a guest room upstairs. "You'll be comfortable here," she said. "Bathrooms at the end of the hall. Breakfast at 7. The room was simple but clean. A bed with a thick quilt, a dresser, a window that looked out onto the storm. Derek and I were too exhausted to do anything but collapse onto the bed. "We got lucky," Derek murmured, already half asleep. "Could have been so much worse." "Yeah," I said, but something felt off. I couldn't quite identify what. Just a vague sense of wrongness, like a note played slightly out of tune. I got up and went to the window, looking out at the storm. Snow was still falling heavily, covering everything in thick white. That's when I noticed it. Our footprints should have been visible, leading from the road to the front door. Even with the snow still falling, there should have been some indication of our path. But the snow around the house was completely smooth and untouched. Like no one had walked through it in hours, like we hadn't walked through it. My stomach dropped. I stared out that window, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. We'd walked from the road. I knew we had. I remembered every difficult step. So where were our footprints? "Derek," I whispered, shaking him awake. "Derek, look at this." He groaned and came to the window. I pointed out at the unmarred snow. He frowned. "Maybe the wind filled them in." "That fast? We got here like 20 minutes ago." "I don't know, Amber. It's a blizzard. Weird things happen." But I could tell he was unsettled too. I couldn't sleep after that. I lay next to Derek, listening to the storm, trying to explain away the missing footprints. Maybe the wind really had covered them. Maybe I was looking at the wrong side of the house. But I kept thinking about other things too. small things that hadn't seemed important at the time. The woman, Margaret, had opened the door immediately, like she'd been standing right there waiting. The house was almost too warm, unnaturally warm even with the fire. The photos on the walls all looked old, faded like they'd been taken decades ago, and none of the family had seemed surprised to see us. No questions about where we'd come from or where we were going. Just immediate acceptance and invitation inside. Around midnight, I got up to use the bathroom. The hallway was dark except for a faint glow from downstairs. I could hear voices, low murmuring, coming from the kitchen. I crept to the top of the stairs and listened. 2 of them. That was Margaret's voice. Ready by morning. Joseph. Never should have. A third voice, younger. The boy. It's too late for that, it's already done. My heart was pounding. I couldn't hear clearly enough to understand the full conversation, but the tone was wrong. There was something sinister in those whispered voices, something that made my instincts scream danger. I went back to the room and shook Derek awake. "We need to leave," I whispered urgently. "Right now." "What? Why?" "Something's wrong here. I heard them talking. Derek, we need to go." He must have heard the fear in my voice because he didn't argue. We got dressed as quietly as possible, grabbed our coats, and crept to the bedroom door. The hallway was empty. The voices had stopped. We made our way downstairs, careful on the creaky steps. The family was sitting in the living room, all 3 of them just sitting in the dark, not speaking, not moving, like they were waiting. We tried to move past them to the front door, but Margaret spoke. "You can't leave." Her voice was flat, wrong. "We need to try to find our car," Derek said, his voice shaking. "Thank you for everything, but..." "You can't leave," she repeated. "You're part of the house now." Joseph stood up. So did the boy. They moved between us and the door. "You walked to us in the storm," Margaret said. "You found us when you should have died. The house chose you." "What the hell are you talking about?" Derek demanded. "Look at the photos," the boy said. His voice was hollow. "Look at the pictures on the walls." I didn't want to look, but I couldn't help myself. I turned to the nearest frame. It was a family portrait. Margaret, Joseph, and the boy dressed in old-fashioned clothes. Behind them, slightly out of focus, were other figures. Dozens of them. Crowded into the background, barely visible. And in the corner of the photo, I recognized 2 faces. Us. Derek and me wearing the clothes we were wearing right now, standing among the crowd of background figures in a photograph that looked like it had been taken 40 years ago. "No," I heard myself say. "No, that's impossible." "The house preserves," Margaret said. "The house protects. You're safe here. You'll always be safe here." Derek grabbed my hand and lunged for the door. Joseph moved to block us, but Derek shoved him hard. The old man stumbled back with unnatural lightness, like he weighed nothing. We got the door open and ran out into the storm. The cold hit us like a wall, but we didn't stop. We ran into the snow, away from the house, toward where we thought the road should be. The storm had stopped. That's the first thing I noticed. The snow was no longer falling. The wind had died completely. And when I looked back at the house, it was dark. Every window black, no smoke from the chimney, no lights anywhere. It looked abandoned, empty. "Where's the road?" Derek was turning in circles. "Where the fuck is the road?" I pulled out my phone. Suddenly I had service, full bars. The time said 4:47 a.m. We'd been in that house for over 6 hours. It had felt like maybe 2. I opened the map app with shaking hands. We were standing in the middle of an empty field, miles from any road. "That's impossible," Derek said, looking over my shoulder. "We walked from the road, it was right there." But the map showed nothing but empty land around us. The nearest road was 3 miles away. We walked. We walked through that field in the dark and the cold until we found a road. We flagged down the first car we saw, a truck driver who looked at us like we were ghosts. He gave us a ride to the nearest town. We called a tow truck for our car, which they found on the road exactly where we'd left it. It started up fine. Nothing wrong with it at all. We told people we'd walked to a farmhouse and stayed there during the storm. But when we tried to find the house again, driving back during daylight, there was nothing there, just an empty field. I did some research later. There used to be a farmhouse in that area. It burned down in 1974. The whole family died, a couple, their son and 2 travelers who'd stopped there during a snowstorm. The travelers were never identified. I found a newspaper photo from 1973 showing the family standing in front of their home. In the background of the photo, barely visible, you can see the faces of other people. So many other people crowded into the edges of the image. One of them looks exactly like my grandmother, who disappeared during a snowstorm in 1952. We left that state the next day and never went back. But sometimes Derek wakes up in the middle of the night and says we never made footprints. And I know exactly what he means. We didn't walk to that house, we were called to it. And somewhere in a photo on a wall in a house that doesn't exist anymore, we're still there, standing in the background, waiting for the next travelers to arrive. Story 7. My ex started sending me Christmas cards. The card I opened this morning was different from the others. All the previous ones showed places: my apartment building, my car, my office, even the coffee shop I stop at every morning. But this one showed something else. It was a photo of a key, my apartment key, sitting on a table I didn't recognize, and written on the card in his familiar handwriting: I don't need to watch from outside anymore. I met Jordan 3 years ago. We dated for 18 months, and for most of that time I thought he was perfect, attentive, romantic, always wanting to know where I was and what I was doing. I mistook his obsessive behavior for caring until it became too much. He needed to know everything: who I was with, what I was talking about when I'd be home. He'd show up unannounced at my work, at my friends' houses, at restaurants where I'd gone for lunch. When I tried to break up with him the first time, he cried, begged, promised he'd change. Like an idiot, I believed him. The second time, he got angry. Not physically violent, but scary. Punching walls, throwing things, screaming about how I couldn't just abandon him after everything he'd done for me. The third time, I didn't tell him face to face. I did it over the phone from my friend's apartment, and I didn't go home for 3 days. When I finally returned, my apartment was full of flowers. Roses everywhere, with notes about how sorry he was and how much he loved me. It took 6 months and a restraining order to finally get away from him. I moved to a new city 2 hours away, changed my phone number, deleted all my social media, started over completely. My friends knew not to mention me to him or tell him anything about where I'd gone. That was 2 years ago. I thought I was safe. I thought I'd finally escaped. Then 4 days ago, I received the first Christmas card. It came in my apartment building's mailbox, addressed to me at my new address. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting immediately. That careful, slightly old-fashioned script Jordan always used. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a Christmas card with a generic winter scene, snowflakes and pine trees. But tucked inside was a photo, my apartment building. Taken from across the street, showing the front entrance clearly. Recent, I could see my neighbor's Christmas wreath on the door. No message, just the photo. I called the police. They took a report but said there wasn't much they could do. The restraining order had expired, and technically sending a Christmas card wasn't illegal. Even with the photo, they said it could be argued he just happened to see the building and didn't know I lived there specifically. But I knew better. Jordan had found me. After 2 years of silence, he'd somehow tracked me down. I didn't sleep that night. I kept checking my locks, looking out the window, jumping at every sound. The second card arrived the next day. This one contained a photo of my car. My license plate was clearly visible. It was parked in the lot behind my office building, a location I'd never told anyone connected to my old life. The message inside read, "Hope you're having a good holiday season. Looks like you're doing well." My hands wouldn't stop shaking as I called the police again. Different officer this time, equally unhelpful. "Has he threatened you? Tried to contact you directly? Approached you in person?" No. "Then I'm sorry, but there's not much we can do. Document everything, and if he escalates, call us immediately." I called my best friend Casey, sobbing. "He knows where I work. He knows my car. He's been following me." "Come stay with me," she said immediately. "Pack a bag and come over right now." But I didn't want to lead him to her apartment. What if he followed me? What if I put her in danger? I stayed home, but I bought a security camera for my door and a baseball bat that I kept next to my bed. The third card arrived on the third day. A photo of the coffee shop I stop at every morning. Taken from inside, showing the exact table where I always sit, showing my usual seat. The message, "You always did love your morning coffee. Some things never change." He'd been inside. He'd been close enough to take that photo, close enough to see where I sat. Had I seen him? Had he been there while I was there watching me? I stopped going to that coffee shop. I started taking different routes to work. I looked over my shoulder constantly. The fourth card showed my office building's lobby. The photo was taken from just inside the entrance, showing the security desk and the elevator banks. "Your office looks nice. I'm glad you found such a good job." He'd been inside my office building. The fifth card was a photo of my gym, the women's locker room door specifically. No message that time. The implication was enough. I stopped going to the gym. I stopped going anywhere except work and home. I had groceries delivered. I parked in the underground garage and took the elevator straight to my apartment floor. The sixth card arrived yesterday. A photo of my apartment building's hallway, my floor, my door visible at the end of the corridor. "You're so close now." I called the police again, more frantic this time. I showed them all the cards, all the photos, explained how he was getting closer with each one. They assigned a patrol officer to drive by my building more frequently. They said they'd try to locate Jordan and talk to him, but they still couldn't arrest him. He hadn't technically done anything illegal. I stayed at a hotel last night. I didn't tell anyone where. I paid cash, used a fake name. This morning, sir, when I went back to my apartment to grab more clothes, there was another card waiting in my mailbox. A photo of the hotel I'd just stayed at, that no one should have known about, and the message I already told you about. "I don't need to watch from outside anymore." With a photo of my apartment key on an unfamiliar table. I'm sitting in my car right now, parked 2 blocks from my apartment, writing this because I don't know what else to do. I can't go home. He has a key, or he's implying he has access somehow. He knew about the hotel. He's been following me everywhere, knowing where I'll be before I even get there. The police told me they'd send someone to check my apartment, but they can't force entry without evidence of a crime in progress. They suggested I hire a locksmith to change my locks. But what good will that do if he's already been inside? If he's already seen everything, touched everything, been in my space? I keep looking at that photo of the key, trying to figure out whose table it's sitting on, where he took that picture. And then I realize the reflection in the table's surface shows a window. And through that window, I can see a building, my building. He took that photo from an apartment in my building. He's not just watching from outside, he's living here. He's been living here maybe for days or weeks, close enough to monitor my comings and goings, to know my schedule perfectly. I call the building manager with shaking hands. Did anyone new move in recently, in the last few months? Let me check. Yeah, we had a tenant move into 4B about 6 weeks ago. Quiet guy, keeps to himself. What's his name? I can't give out that information, I'm sorry. Please, it's an emergency. Is his name Jordan? A pause. No, his name is Marcus Reeves. But that doesn't mean anything. He could be using a fake name, he could have forged documents. What does he look like? I really can't. Please. I think he might be stalking me. I think he's my ex-boyfriend. I have a history with him. Please. Another pause. I only saw him once. 30s, brown hair, average height. Wore glasses. Jordan doesn't wear glasses, but he could have changed his appearance. I'm sitting here 2 blocks from a building where my stalker ex-boyfriend might be living 4 floors above me with access to my floor, my hallway, possibly my apartment. The police are on their way, but I already know what they'll say. They can't enter someone else's apartment without probable cause. They'll knock on 4B's door, and if no one answers, or if someone named Marcus Reeves answers and says everything's fine, there's nothing they can do. I could be wrong. It might not be him. It might be a coincidence. But I know Jordan's handwriting. I know his patterns. I know that he's the kind of person who would plan something like this, who would find it romantic somehow to rent an apartment near mine, to watch over me, to document my life and send me proof that he's always there. I can't go home. I can't stay in a hotel. I can't go to friends because I'll lead him there. I have nowhere that's safe. And I keep thinking about that first card, the first photo of my apartment building. How did he get my address? I've been so careful. Then I remember I ordered something online 2 months ago, a package that got delivered to my building. I used my real name. He could have been tracking my online purchases, waiting for a delivery address. Something I never thought to protect against because I was worried about social media and phone numbers and physical interactions. One small mistake, that's all it took. My phone buzzes. A text from an unknown number. You look scared sitting in your car. You should come inside. It's getting cold. I drop the phone. Look around frantically. Where is he? Which window? Another text. 4B. I'll leave the door unlocked. I'm calling 911. I'm screaming into the phone that someone is threatening me, stalking me, that I need help immediately. But even as the dispatcher assures me officers are on the way, I see movement in a 4th floor window of my building. Someone standing there, looking down at the street, at my car, waving. I can't see his face from here, but I know it's him, and I realize he's not trying to hide anymore. He wanted me to know. He wanted me to figure it out. This was never about the cards. It was about showing me how completely he'd infiltrated my life. How there was nowhere I could go that he couldn't follow. How all my efforts to escape had been meaningless because he'd been patient, he'd been careful, and he'd been right there the whole time. The police are here now. I'm sitting in the back of their car while they go to check apartment 4B. But I already know what they'll find. He'll be gone. The apartment will be empty, or someone named Marcus Reeves will answer and have no idea what they're talking about. And tonight or tomorrow or the next day I'll receive another card, showing me somewhere new, somewhere I thought was safe, proving that safety is an illusion and he'll always be one step ahead. I haven't felt safe in 2 years, and now I know I never will again. Story 8. I stayed home alone for the holidays. I just watched 4 nights of security footage. 4 nights of someone entering my apartment at exactly 4 a.m., standing at the foot of my bed for exactly 7 minutes, then leaving. I watched myself sleeping, completely unaware, while a dark figure stood there in my room, breathing, watching, close enough to touch me. I never woke up. Not once. And I'm still here in the apartment because I have nowhere else to go. Because whoever's been visiting me knows where I live, knows how to get in, and I have no idea who they are. Everyone left for Christmas. Every single person I know went to visit family somewhere else, traveling for the holidays, doing the normal thing people do. My parents retired to Arizona last year and they invited me to spend Christmas with them, but flights were expensive and I'd already used most of my vacation time. My roommate went home to Minnesota. My friends scattered to various family obligations across the country, which meant I had the apartment to myself for 10 days. And honestly, I was looking forward to it. I know that probably sounds sad to some people, but I'm an introvert. The idea of having the place completely to myself, no one to coordinate with, no one else's schedule to work around, it sounded perfect. I stocked up on groceries, downloaded a bunch of movies, planned to catch up on sleep and reading and just decompress. The first few days were exactly what I'd hoped for. Quiet, peaceful. I slept in late, stayed up late, walked around in my pajamas all day. The building was eerily empty. Most of the other tenants had also left for the holidays. The parking lot was half empty, the hallways silent. It felt like having the entire world to myself. I started noticing small things around day 3, nothing dramatic, just tiny details that seemed off. A kitchen chair that I was pretty sure had been pushed in but was now pulled out slightly. The bathroom door left ajar when I thought I'd closed it. A cup in the sink that I didn't remember using. Each time I'd pause and think about it, then conclude I must have forgotten. I'd been distracted, binge-watching shows, not paying attention to my actions. It was easy to get absent-minded when you were alone and relaxed. Then on day 4, I found something that couldn't be explained away so easily. I woke up around 10 a.m. and went to the kitchen to make coffee. My laptop was on the kitchen table. I'd left it there the night before, but now it was open. I always close my laptop when I'm done with it. Always. It's a habit so ingrained I don't even think about it anymore. I stood there staring at it, trying to remember if maybe I'd gotten up in the middle of the night and used it. But no, I'd slept straight through. I checked the browser history, nothing new. No one had used it, so why was it open? I checked the apartment door, locked, with the deadbolt engaged like always. I checked the windows, locked. I lived on the 4th floor, so it's not like someone could have climbed in anyway. I was alone. The apartment had been locked all night. No one could have gotten in. I was working myself into anxiety over nothing. But that night I found it hard to sleep. I kept listening to the silence, hyper-aware of every small sound. The building settling, the heat kicking on, the faint hum of the refrigerator. Around 3 a.m. I finally drifted off. I woke up the next morning feeling groggy and strange, like I'd slept deeply but not restfully. And when I walked into the living room, I froze. One of the couch cushions was on the floor. I hadn't touched that cushion. It had been on the couch when I went to bed, I was certain of it. Now it was lying on the floor 3 feet away from the couch, like someone had removed it and set it down carefully. My heart was pounding. I walked through the entire apartment, checking every room, every closet, looking for any sign that someone had been there. Nothing. Everything else looked normal. But that cushion shouldn't have been on the floor. I called my building manager. Is there any reason maintenance would have entered my apartment last night? Not without notifying you first. Did you submit a work order? No. Then no one should have gone in. Is there a problem? I wanted to say yes. I wanted to explain about the chair and the door and the laptop and the cushion. But saying it out loud made it sound crazy. Things moved? Maybe I'd done it myself. Maybe I was sleepwalking. Maybe I was just going stir-crazy from being alone too long. No, I said, no problem, just checking. But that afternoon I ordered a security camera, a cheap one from Amazon, the kind you mount on a wall and connect to your phone. It would record motion-activated footage and store it in the cloud. I installed it in the living room, angled so it could see the front door and most of the main living area. If someone was coming in, I'd catch them on video. That night I barely slept. I kept my phone next to my pillow, checking the camera app compulsively. The live feed showed my empty living room, shadowy in the dim light from outside. Nothing moved. No alerts, but in the morning when I checked the footage, there was a gap. From 4 a.m. to 4:07 a.m. there was no recording. Like the camera had turned off for exactly 7 minutes, then turned back on. I checked the settings. The camera was plugged in, fully charged, connected to Wi-Fi. There was no reason for it to stop recording, unless someone had turned it off. Unless someone had known it was there and deliberately disabled it. My hands were shaking. I was alone in the apartment, doors locked, windows locked, and somehow someone had gotten in and turned off my camera for 7 minutes in the middle of the night. I should have left right then. I should have grabbed my keys and driven to a hotel or a friend's place in another city, but here's the thing. I kept telling myself there had to be a rational explanation. Cameras glitch. Maybe there was a technical error. Maybe the Wi-Fi had dropped for those 7 minutes. I tested the camera all day and it worked perfectly. That night I didn't sleep at all. I sat in bed with my bedroom door locked, lights on, phone in my hand, watching the camera feed. At 4:00 a.m. the feed cut to black. I stared at the screen, my heart hammering. 7 minutes. I counted them. At 4:07 the feed came back. I immediately opened the recorded footage and scrubbed back to 3:59 a.m. The video showed my empty living room, quiet, still. At exactly 4 a.m. a dark figure walked into frame. I screamed and dropped my phone. When I picked it up with shaking hands, I forced myself to watch the rest of the footage. The figure moved through my living room slowly, calmly. It was a person, I could tell that much. Average height, dressed in dark clothes, face obscured by shadows and what might have been a hood. They walked to my bedroom door. They stood there for a moment, facing the door. My door. Where I'd been sitting on the other side, watching my phone, completely unaware that someone was standing right there. Then they turned and walked toward the camera. Reached up. The feed went black. 7 minutes later, the feed resumed, showing an empty living room again. I sat there in my locked bedroom, shaking uncontrollably, trying to process what I'd just seen. Someone had been in my apartment at 4 a.m. They'd disabled my camera, they'd stood outside my bedroom door, and then they'd left. I called 911. Police came within 20 minutes. I showed them the footage. They searched the entire apartment, checked all possible entry points. "All your locks are secure," one officer said. "No signs of forced entry. No damage to windows or doors. Do you have any idea who this might be?" "No, I've been alone for days. Everyone I know left for the holidays." "Does anyone else have a key to your apartment?" "My roommate, but she's in Minnesota." "Could she have given the key to someone else?" I don't think so, but I can ask." They filed a report and said they'd increase patrols in the area, but there wasn't much else they could do without more information. They suggested I change my locks and consider staying somewhere else until my roommate returned. I texted my roommate. She called back immediately, sounding terrified. "I didn't give anyone my key. Lauren, what's going on?" I explained everything. The moved objects, the camera footage, the figure in my apartment. "Get out of there," she said, "right now. Come stay with me. I'll buy you a plane ticket." But I'd already checked flights. Everything was booked solid for the holidays or absurdly expensive, and I couldn't afford it. "I'll change the locks tomorrow," I said. "I'll be careful." That night I didn't stay in the apartment. I sat in my car in the parking lot, doors locked, watching the building entrance. At 4 a.m., I saw someone exit the building, a figure in dark clothes walking calmly across the parking lot. They got into a car I didn't recognize and drove away. I ran inside and checked my apartment. Everything looked exactly the same as when I'd left it, but I knew they'd been there. The locksmith came the next morning and changed all my locks. New keys, new deadbolt, everything. This should keep anyone out who had the old keys, he said. I thanked him and paid him and felt slightly safer. That night I set up my camera again. This time I added a second camera in the bedroom facing the door. I sat up in bed watching both feeds on my phone, absolutely determined to stay awake. I made it until 3:45 a.m. Then, despite the coffee and the fear and my best efforts, I felt my eyelids getting heavy. I woke up at 7 a.m. with my phone still in my hand. I checked the footage with a sick feeling in my stomach. At 4 a.m., the living room camera cut out, but the bedroom camera kept recording, and it showed my bedroom door slowly opening. The figure stood in the doorway for a long moment, silhouetted against the hall light I'd left on. Then they walked into my room. They stood at the foot of my bed. For 7 minutes they stood there, not moving, just standing there watching me sleep. I could see myself in the frame, curled up under the blankets, completely unconscious, vulnerable, helpless. The figure didn't do anything else, didn't touch anything, didn't come closer, just stood there perfectly still for exactly 7 minutes. Then they turned and walked out. The door closed. At 4:07, the living room camera resumed. I watched that footage 5 times, pausing on every frame, trying to see a face or identifying feature, but they were too careful. Hood up, face in shadow, gloves on. This was when I finally checked the previous night's footage more carefully. I went back through every recording since I'd installed the camera. Every single night, the same thing. At 4 a.m., someone entered my apartment, walked to my bedroom, stood there for 7 minutes, left at 4:07. The first night before I'd installed the bedroom camera, they'd been doing this and I never knew. They'd been watching me sleep for at least 4 nights, possibly longer, standing close enough to touch me, close enough to hear me breathe. And I never woke up. I called the police again, showed them the new footage. This time, they took it more seriously. We'll analyze the footage, see if we can identify anything. In the meantime, you need to stay somewhere else. But they changed the locks, I said. How did they get in? No one had an answer. They checked the apartment again. Still no signs of forced entry. The new locks were intact. Could they have a key from a previous tenant? One officer suggested. Sometimes old keys still work if the lock mechanisms aren't fully replaced. But the locksmith had replaced everything. New deadbolt, new cylinder, everything. Could be a master key, another officer said. Maintenance or management might have one. I called the building manager. He swore no one on his staff had entered my apartment. He came over personally and inspected the locks. These are good locks, he said. No one's picking these. If someone's getting in, they have a key. But I changed the locks, he frowned. I'll check if maintenance has any master keys that might work. But I don't think so. I'm sitting here now in broad daylight trying to figure out what to do. It's December 23rd. My roommate comes back on the 26th. 3 more days. The police suggested I stay with someone local, but everyone I know is gone. They suggested a hotel, but I've looked. Everything nearby is fully booked for the holidays. The nearest hotel with availability is 40 miles away, and I'd have to leave my car in the apartment parking lot overnight. Which means this person would know I'm not here. Would know I'm scared. Would know they've won. Part of me, the stubborn part, the part that's furious about being terrorized in my own home, wants to stay. Wants to set up more cameras, stay awake, catch this person in the act. But the other part, the part that watched myself sleeping while a stranger stood over my bed, is absolutely terrified. I don't know who this person is. I don't know what they want. I don't know why they're doing this. They haven't hurt me. They haven't stolen anything. They haven't left any messages or threats. They just come in at 4 a.m., stand in my room for 7 minutes, and leave. What are they doing during those 7 minutes? Just watching or something else? I've checked my belongings obsessively. Nothing seems moved or taken. But how can I be sure? I think about all those nights before I installed the cameras. How many times did they do this before I knew? How long have they been watching me, and how did they know I'd be alone? How did they know everyone would be gone for the holidays? Have they been watching the building, watching the parking lot, noting which cars left, which apartments went dark? Or have they been watching me specifically? Tonight is night 8. In a few hours, it'll be 4 a.m. again. I've set up 4 cameras now: living room, bedroom, hallway, and kitchen. Overlapping coverage, multiple angles. If they come back tonight, and I know they will, I'll capture them from every direction. But I keep thinking about how easily they disabled the first camera, how they knew exactly where it was and how to turn it off. They'll probably do the same thing tonight. And I'll be here in my locked bedroom, knowing that at 4 a.m. someone will enter my apartment and stand at the foot of my bed. The police have increased patrols. They'll drive by every hour. But that's not 4 a.m. And even if they're nearby, this person is in and out in 7 minutes. I'm so tired. I haven't slept properly in days. My eyes burn, my hands shake. But I can't sleep tonight. I have to stay awake. I have to see who this is. I keep looking at the footage from last night, pausing on that dark figure standing over me. There's something about their posture, something patient, something that suggests this isn't random. They're not here to rob me, they're not here to hurt me, they're here for something else. Some reason I can't begin to understand. It's 11:47 p.m. now. 4 hours and 13 minutes until they come back. I'm not leaving. I can't leave. This is my home, but I'm not sleeping either. Tonight I'll be awake when they arrive. Tonight I'll finally see who's been visiting me while I sleep, and maybe finally I'll understand why.